I could be gone today. And that might be the last thing that I say to him that he'll remember. I would say when it comes to leaving your legacy, make sure you're telling the people in your life how you feel about them, what they mean to you, how proud you are of them. Not just your kids, but your wife and your friends and business partners and everybody. Just tell people how you feel. I think that's going to go a long way, because you know what? When you think about the people you loved, don't you remember how they made you feel? Isn't that what you remember the most? Kipp, what's up, man? Great to see you today. Glad we can make this work, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us an update. You were traveling last week. You met up with some guys, some Order of Man guys, or a different event back east or in the Midwest?
Yeah, I was in St. Louis, and there's a group called Save St. Louis, and they do a lot of different things, but they run a men's group. Brett is his name, runs a men's group called Man to Man. And it's just something he wanted to start. It's very faith and Christian based, and he wanted to start. And he brings speakers in once a month and gets all the guys together above a coffee shop. There's this little cool event center above Omen Coffee in St. Louis. And we talked for about an hour and a half, just some brotherhood, and talked about biblical examples of manhood and how we can incorporate some of those principles in our own life. And they had 40, 50 guys there. Awesome. And usually it's local men they bring in. They've only done, this is their third time. And it's usually, the last two have been local guys, but Brett's been a fan and follower of the movement for some time. So he reached out months ago and I said, yeah, man, let's do it. And so he invited me out there. I went and spoke, and man, just had a really good time with that crew. And then of course, just went to a Blues game. Hockey is amazing. It's such a cool sport. It's it's crazy. We saw the, what's it called? It's like the Cathedral Basilica or something in St. Louis. I think I might be butchering that. It is an incredible church. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And then we went to some museums and we were busy the whole time. It was a quick trip, but man, we had a great time. St. Louis was pleasantly surprising. Like I didn't expect it to be horrible, but I had such a much better time than even I thought I would.
Yeah. Well, and this is a testament of like the importance of guys listening to this podcast to like follow you, because things like this happen, right? Like we actually both do this, but you do obviously way more than I do. And obviously you're the attraction, but like when you travel, you often hop on social media and like go, hey, I'm going to be in this area. Let's meet up. Yeah. And the only way you guys are going to know about that is by following Ryan on the socials. So make sure to do that. Yeah. So that way you can be in the know.
Yeah, I've got some good plans. I'm going to be in Austin in December. I'm going to be in Dallas in January. I'm going to be in Idaho, I think, in January or February. So I'm going to be doing a lot more traveling in the coming months and into next year. So yeah, make sure you stay tuned in, because when I go do these things, I want to meet men who believe in what we're doing, or men who haven't been yet introduced to the movement, and grow this thing from the ground up.
Absolutely. Well, should we get in some questions? We've asked the Facebook group as well as the Iron Council, some questions around building legacy. We have kind of legacy specific questions, but we also have some generic ones. I mean, legacy is kind of a broad term, so we'll give some grace to some of these questions.
Yeah, we won't beat them up too bad. They're probably still pretty good questions. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's get after it.
All right. Ian Henritz, how do you go from not knowing anyone or being involved in any group, such as a church and others, to making an impact on your community? I want to step up in life and be part of a community, but I don't know where to start. I'm sure it's just me being scared, and I need to stop overthinking it and just do. Honestly, part of it is I'm not even sure where to go to get started or what to do.
I'm gonna go ahead and respectfully disagree with Ian on that one. You know where to go because you already said it, like church and other organizations. you said it in your question.
Yeah.
So look, I think your assessment of being afraid is spot on. I think your assessment of overthinking it is probably accurate, and it sounds like you have the answers to your questions already. But let's hash this out for anybody who's listening, and for Ian as well. The first thing you need to do is go where the good men are. And there's three places in particular, broadly, three places. And I'll tell you what they are. Church, you already mentioned that. Go find a good church congregation. Those are good men. They're trying to be better. They believe in morality, objective morality, and they're all working towards a common goal. So church. Number 2, the gym. And the gym could be jujitsu. It could be an actual gym. It could be a CrossFit gym, powerlifting gym, jujitsu, martial arts, karate, whatever, the gym. Those guys there are working their bodies and their minds. They're disciplined. They're committed. They want to improve their physical performance. You know there's going to be good guys there. And the third is business outings, Business Network International, Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, other business functions and meetings that are going on within your community. And you can find all of these by going to even your community center. Every town has a community center. Run down there, talk to the person there and say, hey, I'm looking to connect with a good group of business owners or entrepreneurs or people who go on hikes on the weekend or people who are learning about photography or underwater basket weaving or whatever your thing is. And each community center usually has a little pamphlet that has a list of all their programs and classes and courses that are available, and they're cheap. They're like $5, $10, $15 for a month. That's how you go connect with people. But that's really the first step, and that's the easiest step. Some of you might hear that and think, oh my gosh, I'm intimidated just thinking about that. Just make a commitment to do it twice per month. Church once a week, and some extracurricular activity every 2 weeks, at least at first. But here's the hard part. You have to insert yourself into the conversations that are taking place. It's not enough to go to the gym and be a wallflower. You're not going to meet anybody.
Yeah.
It's not enough to go to chamber and hide in the corner and let everybody else speak and you don't share who you are, or what you do, or what you're about, or introduce yourself to anybody. It's not enough to go to church and sit in the back pew and let the pastor give the sermon and then leave immediately before anybody has the chance to say hi to you. So you really have to go out of your way to insert yourself into conversations. And the way that I've done this in the past is very simply say, let's say I met you at church, Kipp, and I introduced myself. I would say this, hey, you know what? I'm new to the area. Is there anything going on this weekend or coming up this week that I should be aware of that I might be interested to check out? And more often than not, you're going to tell me things that I can go do, and you're probably going to invite me to something if you have something going on.
Totally.
When I moved back to Southern Utah, I used this exact strategy. I went to jiu-jitsu, and I knew a guy or two there, but for the most part, I didn't know anybody there. And after class, everybody was just sitting on the mats, just shooting the breeze, just talking and hanging out on the mats. And I walked off the mats and I was going to get changed. And I'm like, no, this is part of the reason you're here, brotherhood. So I just walked over the middle of the mat. I didn't know any of these guys. I'm like, hey guys, do you mind if I grab a seat with you? I'm new here and just kind of interested in meeting some cool guys. Right? Yeah, grab a seat. So we start talking and just having a conversation about who knows what. And I said the same thing. I'm like, hey, is there anything going on in the next week that maybe I should be aware of? And they're like, oh yeah, fights at the fairgrounds are next weekend. Do you want to go? I have an extra ticket. I'm like, yeah, sure. Met the guys there. Didn't know them. Met them there. Hung out with them for the evening. And a lot of us still, talk and converse and have relationships now. And that was 3 years ago. You just have to exert yourself. And there's another part to your question, which is how do you make your impact in your community? But you can't do that until you start getting around the movers and shakers in your community.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, the only thing I'd add is just the intent needs to be just be curious about people, right? Even people at work, it's interesting, a common thing for people that work in offices right now is like workforce being remote, right? Or in office. And it's interesting because the organization's like, oh, we want people in the office. Why? Because we don't have to be intentional to form relationships. It's like, it's an accident. But if you're intentional, you can make it happen. Like guys, and we say this all the time to the guys in the Iron Council. You're on the Friday call. Someone says something that resonates. Message them. Hey, could I have a 15-minute call? I just want to get to know you. Be curious. And when we're curious at getting to know people, you're going to immediately go like, this is the kind of person I want to surround myself with. or we might be aligned around certain things, around how we see life or marriage or religion or whatever, but you're never going to know that. And it's almost like I can't help but think back. You remember the .com era? It was funny is everybody was like, you build a website and magically everyone will just show up and buy your stuff. That's what everyone assumed. Just make a website and just magically you'll make business. Well, first off, that never was the case. And nor is your impact on your community. You're just not going to show up and all of a sudden people are like flocking to you and going, oh man, Ryan, I want to get to know you. No, you got to be curious in people. You have to reach out to them. And I can't count how many times there's someone I like, and this sounds very selfish or self-centered, but there's people I like because they reached out to me to say, hey, I want to get to know you. And by default, I'm like, I like that guy.
I like that guy. He's
assertive. That's how it works. Yeah, he's assertive and he's interested in me. And we're interested in people that are interested in us.
You know where this is really interesting to me is when people move to a new town. I've heard people say this about moving to a new town and even going to church. What they'll say is, everybody here is just so private. Like nobody welcomed me or nobody introduced themselves. And should they do that? Of course they should. A new neighbor should do that. Somebody at church should do that. So if that's you and you see a new person come in, go welcome them. But that being said, that's not their responsibility. If you want to be part of something, then you have to go introduce yourself. So I've been in new areas where I'm the new person and I go knock on the neighbors' doors and say, hey, I'm new here. We live right over here. Just wanted to let you know, introduce myself, see who the neighbors are. Or at jiu-jitsu, like the example I just gave. But you have to be the assertive one. And then there's another thing too, is you said be interested. I wholeheartedly agree. Be interested and curious about people and also be interesting.
Yeah.
Most people don't talk about that. And I've talked with so many men who are so boring. They don't do anything. They don't have any interest. They don't have any hobbies. There's no edges. There's no adventures they've been on. There's no risks they've ever taken. There's no things they've tried that are new. And I'm like, this is a great conversation with a really boring bump on the log. Guys, build a life that's interesting, not only for the sake of you being more enjoying of your life, but so that people have things to talk with you about and find some commonalities with. You know, I hunt, I train jujitsu, I like to work with my hands, I do Pokemon cards with my kids, I travel all over the country. I like building Legos. There's things that I do that some are risk-taking, some are kind of quirky and nerdy and dorky, but it's the interesting edges that make you a person worth spending time with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love it. All right. Next question. Carnell Tate. He has like 5 questions in a paragraph here. So I'm going to I'm jumping towards the end here. How do I communicate effectively without offending people because of a mindset? Because as a mindset coach, I've had the ability to dismantle limiting beliefs. However, to some people that may be offensive, and the people who I'm looking to help and care for the most may not be able to receive the message I'm delivering. This is a really great question. At least I love this question.
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank on a quote that John Lovell just shared with me. His podcast is coming out next week that I did with him, and what was the quote? I'll have to find it, but it was something like, I'm paraphrasing and I'll look it up, but it's something like niceness if possible, but truth at all costs. And so you can have both, but the priority is always truth.
Yeah.
One thing I would be careful of is offering unsolicited advice, because that's rarely something that's going to be positively accepted by somebody unless they're very open-minded, they're very humble, and they're eager to learn new information and get feedback. Outside of that, unsolicited advice is rarely a good thing to do. When it comes to delivering what you need to deliver, truth is important, but if a person can't receive it, then it really doesn't matter what you said because they're not going to hear it. Yeah. So I look for cues. I ask for permission at times. Even at this event that we did in St. Louis, there was a guy who, it was a smaller group. It was about 40 of us, and I didn't want to talk at them for an hour, and so I was asking questions and good engagement by the group. And And I was asking men, what gives you purpose in life? What's your mission? And I had a couple of guys raise their hand and talk about what they were excited about. And then I had this one guy, and he's like, I don't know if this really counts. I mean, I know it's not as good as what the other guys have said, but my dog really gives me a sense of purpose. You know, I like being with my dog. I like taking care of him. I like training him. He brings a lot of joy to my life, and that's something that gives me meaning and purpose. I know it's not like good, and it may not be a big deal to other people. And he finished up, and I said, hey, man, do you mind if I give you a little coaching? And he's like, yeah, sure. I said, good. I only asked that because I want to make sure that you're comfortable with what I'm about to say. And he was funny. He's like, well, what are you going to say? I'm like, I'll tell you. And I told him, and I said, look, never discount what brings you happiness and fulfillment and joy. It doesn't matter what we think of what brings you fulfillment. Does it make you happy? And he said, yeah. I said, then that's all that matters. You don't need to qualify that.
Totally.
I may not see it the same way, but what relevancy does that have in your life? And he's like, that's a good point. But the reason I bring that up is because I asked for permission first.
Yeah.
And also, I want people to hear the information. And so you can pull punches a little bit, but still have it impactful and still it be honest, right, Kipp? So for example, if let's say I noticed a trend in your behavior that I didn't think was conducive to living the kind of life I know you want to live. We have a good enough relationship where I think I could bring that up unsolicited. Yeah. And what I might say to you is, hey, Kipp, you know, I have to bring something up that's really uncomfortable for me. And the only reason I bring it up is because I love you and I care about you and I really want the best for you. So this is hard for me to say. And you know what? It might be hard for you to hear, but it's more important that I share this with you than just let it slip because we're friends.
Yeah. Shared
That's
purpose.
A way to...
Yeah, shared purpose and contrasting where you don't want the conversation to go, right? Like you aligned with me, right? You just said, hey, we have a shared purpose here. I want you to be great, and I know you want to too. And then you said, where I don't want this to go, right? And that's called contrasting, which is perfect. Sorry, I just want to label that a little bit maybe for the guys listening.
No, I'm glad you said that. But yeah, you soften that blow, you get them ready. They got to put you got to put on a little armor right now, Kipp. You're like, okay, like I'm going to armor myself up. Like give me, like, let me prepare for what I'm going to hear. And then I share what I need to hear, what you need to hear. And, you know, we drive on. And I think if you do it from a position of, the mindset is this: if you're sharing information to beat on your own chest about how great you are, how smart you are, how incredible you are, why everybody just needs to listen to you, it's going to land on deaf ears.
Yep.
But if you approach it and have this mindset that everything I'm going to do, I'm going to share for and on behalf and benefit of the other person, I think you'll navigate those waters more effectively. Even if you are sharing harsh truths, if they know that you're on their side and it's for their benefit, it's gonna you're gonna resonate a lot more than you otherwise would.
Yeah, I love this. One way I approach this is I call it relational influence. And it's interesting because the relational part of this is critical because there's an element of understanding that you need to have about me, Ryan, to be able to speak into me. If you don't know me, right? If you don't know the nuances, if you haven't sought to listen and learn the circumstances by which I do things, then your coaching is about who, or it's short-sighted. It's not in depth, right? It's not correlated to me. And so, you know, we have to have connection with people in the grand scheme of things. If you really want to speak into them, you have to be close enough to the thing that you're coaching about. And then, like you said, an aligned purpose around how this benefits you. I remember I used this example years ago. Well, I don't even know if the coaching worked. You guys can tell us if it actually worked or not. But Ryan gave me coaching early on when we started podcasting together, almost 8 years ago. Crazy. And I remember after one of our recordings, you said, hey, Kipp, you did exactly what you said. You're like, hey, can I give you some feedback? And I'm like, absolutely. But this is the way you said it was so profound. And I use this as an example all the time. You said, you have a tendency to say right at the end of sentences. And by doing so, it may detract from the impact of the message you're trying to share. You didn't criticize, like, you sound stupid, you keep saying right. It was, it deters from your effectiveness. Shared purpose, something, it's about this greater thing that you're trying to achieve that I know is important to you. And the thing that you're doing might be dampening your effectiveness. It didn't feel like an attack at all. It just felt like alignment to what was most important to me. It was spot on.
Well, in my head, I was thinking you sound like an idiot, but I did deliver it.
But use tactics
more effectively.
Absolutely. But it was great. It was great. Like, connect to what's more important to me. And that's what you did. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm glad it resonated. I'm glad I did that. I'm not sure I even was aware of that because I probably do the opposite so many times as well. I'm glad I did it right in that moment. But yeah, I mean, it's really about caring about the other person. You know, there's a tactic that I use when I do public speaking, because I do get nervous in public when I'm doing public speaking. And I've done so much of it, but I still get nervous and I get tense because I really want whatever it is I'm sharing to be helpful for the people who are listening to it. But I get up there and I start rushing through my words and my nerves get the better of me and I get tense. And one thing I started doing that had a really unintended benefit, positive benefit, is that I try, if I can, if the situation allows, to meet as many people who are going to be listening to me before I speak.
Yeah.
So this presentation I did in St. Louis, I got there about a half hour early. Everybody was just kind of hanging out. Brett, the guy that put together the event, introduced me to a few people. I talked to them, asked them about what they were doing, asked what they like about the group, and just kind of shot the breeze with as many guys as I could. And then what I noticed is two things. The reason I do that is because it helps me feel more comfortable, because now I feel like we have a little bit of relatability and it calms my nerves down. But the unintended positive benefit is that people are now more gracious with you when you present and they're more engaged. Because they know you.
Yeah.
See, if you get on a stage and they don't know you, depending on the event, you're still going to have some credibility because you're there speaking, but there's not going to be that connect. It takes a long time, even after the conversation or the presentation, to develop that connection. But man, if you can front end load that, people are going to receive a whole lot more than if you just blabber and regurgitate a lot of information before they connect with you.
Yeah, it's so powerful. There's one thing I really wanted to share with Carnell, if you don't mind, Ryan, me just injecting this in before we move on. Our job, how do I say this? I want to be careful when we speak into people, right? When, like in his example, he's wanting to help people with dismantling some limiting beliefs. Mm-hmm. The power of growth is in choice, not in convincing manipulation. So, like, hold on to that thought that my job is, like, if I convince you, Ryan, if I try to convince you and I use tactics and things to sway your opinion, that has a level of effectiveness. Let's just say an effectiveness level of 3. Mm-hmm. But when I share in a way where your internal dialogue is a consideration of self, where you're saying, man, how does this apply to me? And you come to that conclusion on your own. That is going to be far more effective than anything that I might do. And this is why when we enlist people, when we want to share people, one of the most powerful ways is not to preach at them. The most powerful thing is to share with what I got, how it's made a difference in my life, how this thing that I'm talking about, this limited belief has changed my life for myself. I do that. People will listen from the perspective of, oh man, I wonder how that correlates with me. But the minute I go, Ryan, you need to X, most people, their internal dialogue immediately moves to, oh, I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I disagree. And they start the racket into their head on whether they're in agreement with you or not. So look at this from the perspective of planting the seed. for people to consider for themselves and share in a powerful way. I'm not saying don't do that, but don't latch onto the idea that it has to be their decision. And that is what will be far more effective than anything else.
Yeah, I such a good, the term I use for that is indirect influence. You're influencing somebody indirectly.
Yeah.
Because you're not pushing on them. So an example of that would have come from our Friday call this morning in the Iron Council. And I think you jumped on a little late, didn't you, Kipp? A little bit? And so you may have missed the story that I shared. But I shared a story of going on a backpacking trip with some young men from our church congregation years ago. And we hiked to the bottom of this ravine. It was about 10 miles in, and camped out that night. And then the second day, we were going to hike 10 miles out. And the second day I put my backpack on, and it's just heavy. Man. It's so heavy. I've told you this story. So dang heavy. I'm like, what is going on? I thought I was just tired, or my legs were sore from the 10 miles in. I'm like, I shouldn't feel this heavy. We get up hiking 2-3 miles. I'm like, what is going on? And we take a break, and I start looking at my bag. The boys had put rocks in my bag. And I told this story, and I told them how I took the rocks out. And I thought it was funny. Even at the time, it was funny.
Yeah.
And I took the rocks out, and we kind of tried to put rocks in each other's bags the rest of the trip. But I told this story because I wanted to liken the idea of us carrying around extra weight that's not ours to carry and serves no purpose.
Yeah.
But I didn't just say, hey, guys, take the rocks out of your bag. You have a rock, and you have a rock, and you have a rock, and you have a rock. You got to get that out of there. It's like, no, let me share this story. And then you can see, to your point, how this might fit in your life. And you can start thinking about, even without the prompt, thinking about what rocks you're carrying around that you shouldn't be carrying around. Indirect influence.
Yeah, I love that. I got to share a story. So years ago, you remember high adventures in Boy Scouts, right? It was like this.
Sure. Yeah.
Every couple of years, there's this big event. We did Kings Peak, over, I think, 15 miles in, 15 miles back, right? 4 or 5 days camping. And day one, we pushed the boys too hard, full disclosure. And, we're having, it started snowing. It was raining. Everyone's wet. I mean, it was just a disaster. Just one of those classic Boy Scout stories. You're like, oh my gosh, everything went wrong as possible. And come the morning, we had one particular boy that was, he more or less, he's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just staying right here. And my first initial instinct was like, what? Dude, get off your ass, right? And just like lean into this kid and say, hey, toughen up and belittle, shame, public shame if I need to, manipulate, get him to move. And one of the other leaders, which is a really wise man by the name of Roland Anderson, Roland goes, that's okay. You don't have to go. I'll stay here with you. And that's what we did. We all left. And Roland just sits back with him and just sits down with him like, yeah, you don't have to go. It's your choice. I'll just sit with you. And the story goes, at least how Roland shared it with me, was they're just sitting there and he's like, I'm getting hungry. And he's like, oh, well, all the food's with, all the food just left, right? And he's like,
right.
What are we going to sleep in tonight? And he's like, well, our tents, with the group, and he's like, well, what are we going to do? He's like, I don't know. I mean, it's up to you. Right. And a couple hours in, he's like, we should probably go. And Roland's like, yeah, we probably should. Right. And then they ended up going. And I thought how profound that was, right? I'm not going to force you. I'll be with you. It's your choice. Now there's consequences to these choices, but I'll bear them with you. But let's let you learn this lesson through your lens and not through the lens of manipulation and control, right? And that's kind of what I got from it. It was actually really profound because my natural human instinct was, yell at this kid, right?
Screw you, pal. We're going. Get up.
Yeah, exactly. And I would guarantee that was a major learning lesson for that boy. And he would have never learned anything from me in the way that I was going to react.
Yeah. That's interesting. I like that. I found that quote, by the way, peace if possible, truth at all costs.
Love it.
Attributed to Martin Luther.
Martin Luther King. All right. Travis, Martin Luther, some other Martin Luther.
I thought you were going to say Martin Luther King Jr. is what I thought you were going to say. So.
Oh, got it. All right. Travis Gillis, when life gets busy and complicated and the wheels are starting to fall off with meals, structure, time, balance, what is a good protocol to get order back?
List everything that's on your plate and stop doing anything you don't need to be doing. That could be time wasters. That could be extra board meetings, extra meetings at work that are not necessary, extra charitable things that you're doing, like whatever you can nix it, at least for the time being, because you're going to drop the ball on everything if you keep trying to do all of it. So write a list. Here's all my responsibilities. I got to work. That one's not going away. Maybe you have to coach your kid's baseball team. That one's not going away. You have to take your wife out on dates and continue to court her. That's not going away. Gym, probably shouldn't go away, but maybe you need to pull back a little bit on that. Church obligations, duties, probably not going away, but the rest of it has to go. And have a plan. Hey, I'm going to let these things go until I get this situation tied in, locked down, and I'm just going to focus on the most important things right now. It's when you're troubleshooting, let's say technology is not working. You're going to troubleshoot the most important thing first, right? So your technology is not working. The first thing you do is you just shut the computer down and restart the computer.
Yeah. Process of elimination. Yep.
That's it. Okay, well, that didn't work, but I'm not going to go out and buy a new computer. I'm not going to go out and invest and hire a tech to come in. I'm like, hold on a sec. Let me just try restarting the damn thing. 99% of the time that addresses the issue. Make sure it's plugged into the wall. Like, you don't want to start breaking things apart if maybe the charger's dead. So get another one, plug that one, and see if that fixes the problem. And so you're just analyzing what is the issue in that process of elimination until you get to the problem, and then you address the problem and everything's fine and you drive on. So you have to do the same thing in your life. A bit contrary to what I just told you is sometimes the situation calls for randomization. Sometimes we as men get too monotonous, too structured, too disciplined, and life becomes miserable. Yeah, you're effective. You're getting everything done, and you are a miserable, miserable human being. And in that case, maybe it's shut the computer down and go get a sandwich or go for a walk. How many times have you had a problem and you're like, you know what? Damn, I can't fix this. I'm going to step away for a minute. I'm going to go do something completely unrelated. And then you come back and the solution's like obvious. Like, oh, that's it? Okay. And then it's done. Sometimes in our lives, we as men need a new frame of reference, and you can't get a new frame of reference doing the same thing that you've always done. So who asked this question?
Travis.
So Travis, maybe you just need to take your kids on a camp out this weekend and put all that other stuff aside. I know it's a little counter to what I just told you, but you can figure out what situation is warranted. But I've seen that happen a lot. And then you go out and you go camping, or you go on an adventure, or you go on a hike, or you do something out of the ordinary. You and your wife do something fun and crazy you've always wanted to do but never have. And then you come back with a fresh perspective, you're rejuvenated, and you're excited to dive back into your scheduled life.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we just overcommit, right? I can't think how many times that I've been at work and it's like all these things need to get done. And guess what? At the end of the day, some of them didn't get it done. Was it that critical? No.
No, probably not.
Probably not. And so prioritize and execute on the top priorities and do the top things. And then I would say, if that is the case, if you are prioritizing, then communicate effectively. Hey, these other things, they're not going to get done this week. Ryan, I apologize, right? Like I initially had it done, or I may have put a priority on it because you asked me, hey, Kipp, can you do this? And I'm thinking it's super urgent. And I come to you and say, hey, when do we need to get that done by? And you're like, oh, before the end of the year. I'm like, oh my goodness, right? So over communicate if you're going to shift priorities around, but you might need to get really clear on when things are done versus all these things are important, because the timeline is usually not the same for a lot of people. And you could prioritize and push things that aren't as critical down, or if you're in a position, Travis, where the boss is saying all these things are critical, communicate up front. Hey, I have these 10 things. What's the top priority though? So I can get the right things done, because I may not be able to get all 10 done. And get clear on it. And then just do your best and operate on the top priority items.
There's a little heuristic that I use. I just call it the rule of threes. I don't know. You can call it something else or whatever. But I always look at the things that need to be done and I ask myself, is this going to be important in 3 hours? Is this going to be important in 3 days, in 3 weeks, in 3 months, in 3 years? And that's a good way to evaluate what is important. You know, I get worked up on social media at times and I'm like, okay, hold on. Is this going to matter in 3 minutes, let alone 3 hours? No, it's not. Okay, I can let that go.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal. You know, or let's say you get into an argument with your wife this morning about something. Sure, address what the problem is, but is her frustration with you going to be something that's going to last more than 3 hours or 3 days? If it is, then there's something that's more crucial that needs to be addressed. But if not, you know, babe, look, I'm an idiot. I didn't handle that correctly. And I think I could have done better. Just want to tell you I love you. Water under the bridge. I'll do better. Let some stuff go. I mean, we really need to be better at letting things go. Dwayne Noel, when he was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember the exact question, but I said, what would you tell young men who are trying to build their life or be better, whatever I said. And he said something that stood out with me. He said, chill. Just chill. And which is completely counter to everything else that you hear in self-development.
Yeah.
Don't chill. Go harder. Hustle culture. Rise and grind.
Yep.
And he's like, just chill. Just chill out, which I think the world needs more of that.
Yeah, that's funny. Like even earlier this year, my team, we were just kind of doing strategic planning for the quarter. And our mantra coming out of the quarter was passion and fun. Let's be passionate. Let's get back to having fun.
Have fun.
Yeah. Like, and it's mostly me that's not having fun. I'm like way too serious about things. So
I'm the same way. Serious people have a hard time with it for sure.
All right. Nicholas Wade, what would you consider are signs of spiritual abuse in a pastor or leader at a church?
Signs of spiritual abuse.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's things like misrepresenting scripture.
Yeah.
I also think misrepresenting scripture is probably number one. I also think there's a lot of social issues that preachers and pastors are on the wrong side of, and they're preaching from a position of authority, but they're not referencing any sort of biblical work or reference. And it's just their own opinion, but they're presenting it as if it's biblical in nature. That's spiritual abuse. Did you have something you were going to say on that one, Kipp?
I mean, I struggle. Well, keep going. I don't want to derail us. Keep going.
Yeah, I think you can start to see what those problems are when these cultural issues get brought into a preaching type conversation. Now, there are certain cultural issues, for example, abortion, that I would say that a preacher and a pastor should take on. But one thing that I really have a hard time with is these men who are weak, timid, and cowardly about social norms. I call it the doctrine of popular culture. It's not gospel. It's the doctrine of popular culture. And I see these men who are waving to and fro and tossing and changing their opinion based on what the doctrine of popular culture says, not what the good book says. And so if you have a pastor or preacher who isn't principled, objective morality, for example, then that's somebody who's misusing his position and influencing a lot of people by presenting himself as some sort of biblical scholar or some spiritual advisor when really he's nothing more than a social activist for all the wrong causes.
Totally.
So I would definitely be aware of that as well. I also think there's things that happen in churches where people get taken advantage of. Their kindness, their hospitality, their charity, their effort gets abused and taken advantage of. You know, I saw this in the LDS church. I'm no longer Mormon, but I would see there's this push to have the men in the community like move everybody in and out all the time. It's like, guys, you're perfectly capable of moving yourself in. Now, if we want to be hospitable and neighborly, we should do that. If there's an elderly woman who maybe just lost her husband and she needs her lawn mowed, sure, we should do that. But for other people who are fully capable of taking care of their business, we ought to let them take care of their business and manage their own responsibilities because we do. And another thing that I saw too often was in that church, there was callings, and these callings were fulfilled by members of the congregation. And I would see people be called, young men with families, young men going through school and work full time, just to the brim, be asked to be in the bishopric. Like, that's a guy that has he's got 3 kids under 5 at home. His wife is just going nuts, I'm sure. He's trying to get his master's degrees, working full time. He doesn't need to be in the bishopric right now.
Yeah, totally.
Like, let an older gentleman who has the time and flexibility to do that, and let this young man lead his family and do what he needs to do to build his career. I think taking advantage of people like that is a problem.
Yeah. This was the area that I didn't want to derail, but I think there's some value in this. I immediately, when I read his question, I immediately get quasi-triggered, right? When I hear like, well, you know, like I even cults, when people talk about like, oh, well, these cults are like, they by labeling it as that, we become victims and don't take ownership over the decision, right? So here's a perfect example. So years ago, when I was young, 2 boys, school full-time, working full-time, 2 kids underneath the age of 2, I had no time. And I actually remember, very similar to your scenario, I got called to an important position at church. And I went into the bishop's office and I said, hey, man, you're just trying to kill me. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, I got all this stuff going on. He's like, Kipp, I called you. It is you that needs to own whether it is right for you and your family. And I went, shit, right? Like, got it. That's my decision, right? So even when we say, pastor abusing, or my job abuses me, or my spouse is not physical abuse, but like mental abuse, you're choosing it. So be careful. Don't latch onto this thing of like these people in power are abusing and then we're victims of them. Remove yourself. Change the circumstance. Own the scenario. And when we look at the definition of abuse, it really helps set the tone of this. Abuse is the misuse of power, influence, or position in a way that causes harm emotionally, mentally, physically, or psychologically. It is not defined by the intent of the person doing it, but by the impact of the person's experiencing it. My point being is, you don't know anybody that misuses power. You don't know anyone that misuses influence and position. Welcome to the world. Everybody does. Now, I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm not saying it's right, but you don't think we're all walking around self-righteous, self-centered about how this benefits me and I'm trying to manipulate my people? Most people do. Most people in leadership positions practice, in my opinion, unrighteous dominion. It is our job to say, guess what? I'm not following you. That doesn't work for me. I'm not going to work for this kind of boss. I'm not going to attend and or stand for that in my life. That's unacceptable in my relationships with people. That's not right. And I say all that so we move to a position of empowerment and not be a victim of abuse that might come and go that people may not even realize that they're doing because they're so damn self-centered that they're not even aware of it. You know, and we need to stand, right? And if we find ourselves in these quote unquote environments, man, walk away from those environments. Do something about it. Stand up. And that's how you not only do what's best for you, but you start setting a tone of what's best for other people around you.
Well said. I mean, this is the whole principle behind sovereignty.
Absolutely.
Own your life. You can make those decisions. I remember when I got some callings, and when I'd move into a new ward, they would often, you know, pull new couples in, new people in the area, and introduce themselves. And I would always tell them, I said, you can put me in any calling as long as it's the teacher's quorum with the young men. And they're like, wait, what? We wanted you to be in nursery. Nope,
that doesn't work for me.
We want to do, well, how about primary? No, I just told you, you can put me with the teachers. How about the deacons? Did I say deacons? Did I stutter? You can put me with the teachers or find someone else because that's what I want to do. And I'll serve, but it has to be within the constraints of what I want to do.
And
I have the capacity for.
I love the bigger framework here of sovereignty around this, because how often I latch myself onto a religious group and that group asks me to do something. So what do? Okay. I'm no longer independently seeking my sovereignty and spirituality. I've just latched onto a group. And we do this politically as well. Oh, I'm a Democrat. Oh, how are they leaning? Oh, that's my opinion now. It's like, guys, we need to stop being lazy and latching on so we can be lazy in our thinking and be your own version. And don't latch onto a political party. Don't latch onto a spiritual group and call that religion. You find your own spirituality. You figure out what's best for you and your family. You vote politically based upon your principles, not the principles of some group.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I mean, I wrote down here as you were saying this is, you know, you have to have your own testimony of Christ if we're talking about it from the spiritual realm.
Totally.
We can lean on other people's testimonies. I do. You know, I said
as
I had
inputs.
John Lovell on the podcast. Yeah. I mean, he's highly spiritual. He's a pastor. He talks a lot about his faith, and a lot of the answers that he gave me to the questions I asked were rooted in his faith-based principles. And I took that as his part of his testimonial about Christ and God. And it was impactful to me. And also, I have a responsibility to develop my own testimony, free and independent of what John Lovell or whoever else thinks. Yeah. Because if he dies or changes his opinion or his mind, or it's at odds now with what I believe, that stuff shatters. And that's where people say, oh, well, you know, they leave something that's good because their involvement with it was reliant on someone else, another human being, instead of being on their own 2 feet. Yeah. All right, cool. What's next? We beat that one up.
Yeah. Brian Don, what are the best ways to leave a legacy while going through a divorce? It feels like my reputation with my kids will be tainted because of it.
Yeah, it might. It really might. It might be tainted. We have a program called Divorce Not Death, so you should check that out because it goes through some of this as well. In fact, we have a call here in the next hour and a half for that. But I think the best thing you can do is show up fully for your kids and let them see you showing up the way that you want to show up. And you probably, because of the divorce, I imagine that you have a part to play in it to some degree. I don't know to what degree, but you do. And you probably weren't showing up as fully as you should have been, but you can now. And so it goes with texting and phone calls and inviting them over and spending time with them and being engaged. I wrote my son a text just yesterday, and it was heartfelt. You know, it was from the heart. I told him how I felt about what he's doing and how proud I am of him. And I shared with him how I didn't always show up. And he wrote a really nice message back to me about how he hasn't always shown up and what he's afraid of as he, graduates high school. It was awesome. And that's part of the legacy I want to leave. There's another thing too that you have to be very aware of is I don't know the dynamic between you and your ex, but you need to treat her well, even if you don't want to. Yeah. Even if the only reason you can see for treating her well is that it draws you closer to the kids, then you should play that game all day long. Because if you aren't treating her well, or you lash out, or you get emotional, or you use manipulation tactics, or you try to get at her, or whatever, that's going to trickle down to the kids. Either she's going to directly influence them and tell them how big of an asshole you're being, or her behavior will be seen by your kids and it will be mimicked and mirrored towards you from them. I've had this happen. Yeah. And I think one of the best things that you can do for your children and you and the relationship you have with each other is to treat her well as you can, in spite of how you might feel about her. You got to do, it's just part of the game.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way.
I mean, who they are is a part of her. You don't think they internalize that? Yeah, that you hate part of what made them?
Something they love so much.
Yeah, that they adore.
Because look, I did something, and I've only done this blatantly once. I said something to my daughter about my ex that I shouldn't have said. And it wasn't horrible. It wasn't but it was something.
Yeah.
And man, my daughter jumped on that one. I've never seen her rush so quick to defend somebody and be angry with me over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, got it. Lesson learned. That doesn't help the relationship with my daughter.
Yeah, that's part of who they are. Brian, I operate from this perspective. You said it feels like my reputation might be tarnished. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Just assume it. Your impact is now, let me say it this way.
Diminished,
your ability to be impactful to your children is now diminished, period. So now's, you got to rise to the occasion. You got to work harder than you probably had to work before. In spite of your circumstance, you have to do a bunch of stuff that you probably didn't have to do before for the same level of impact. Welcome to being divorced. And you can do it. One thing that comes to mind is don't justify the divorce. Like, don't spend the rest of your 20 years trying to not be bad, trying to protect your reputation and explain it. No, you know what? It is what it is. Own your part in it, move forward, and rise to the occasion. And that's what's going to have to be done, right, for you to have an impact. But I would assume, absolutely. And I get triggered whenever I be like, oh, well, kids are smart, they're resilient. You know what? Screw that. Anyone that says that to you, tell them, well, we'll see when my kid's 25 and he has commitment issues because he has unaddressed resolve with the fact that me and his mom broke up. Then you tell me how resilient they are. Trust me, it's affecting your kids. Absolutely it is. And I don't like to downplay it and say it's going to be okay. No, they're going to be affected. So you better rise to the occasion and make up the difference and do your best to be impactful, to ensure that they're loved, to ensure that you love all things that love them, including their mom, and that you own your world in it in spite of this unfortunate circumstance. That's my take on this.
I agree. And you have to be honest with them to the degree that they're capable of understanding, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like when my kids ask about the divorce or something gets brought up, I tell them, hey, I wish we wouldn't have gone through that.
Yep.
If I were to do it all over again, I would do it differently. Here's how.
Yep.
Just honesty.
Totally. And
all
that's,
right, man, let's
by the
take
way,
one more, Kipp.
We actually only have one more. No, I was just going to say really quick. I mean, that's how you deal with all past experiences that weren't ideal. You become a better version of yourself because of it. So make sure that you're becoming a better version of yourself. All right. Kyle Leverston What tactics do you use to ensure that you don't trade long-term legacy for short-term comfort? I find myself setting non-negotiables that are tied to the idea of leaving my legacy rather than using motivation as a main catalyst. Could you two elaborate on anything in particular that has helped you? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I know you guys are sick of hearing me say this, but I use our battle planning system. And part of our battle planning system, the first part of it is vision. And that vision is how you want to show up, what type of life you want to create, what kind of man you want to be, how you want to show up for others. And when you have that vision, then what we do is we reverse engineer the process. So if I'm tempted to do something in the short term, maybe unnecessary expenses when I have part of my vision is to buy a home, for example, or to buy a ranch and have some hunting property. And I'm tempted to spend 3, 4, 5, 10 grand on a new truck. 10 grand, 100 grand on a new truck.
That's good. What truck are you buying?
I'm thinking like 1999 when I bought my Toyota Tacoma. Even then, I think it was like 18 when I bought it. But yeah, little misspeak there. If I'm tempted to spend 70, 80, 90, 100 grand on a new truck, I can look at my vision and say, new truck. Let me go through my vision. Nope, don't see new truck on that vision of mine, but I do see the hunting ranch. So does that diminish my ability to achieve my vision? Yeah, not doing that. I think my old truck looks and performs just fine. And that's the one I'll be driving around on the ranch because that matters more to me than the brand new spiffy truck that I just bought, that I just spent $10,000 on.
Yeah. I love it, man.
So yeah, reverse engineer it. And then, your tactics on a daily basis that align with your objectives, that align with your vision, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And do whatever you need to do to not lose connection to that vision, right? We tell guys this a lot in Iron Council, right? We write it, but what are you doing to put it on the forefront of your mind on a regular basis and check in on it? The last thought, I want to share this funny video. You probably saw this, Ryan. It was Mike Tyson. Do you remember this? And he was being interviewed by this sweet little girl on an up and coming fight. And she said, she asked him about legacy and his thoughts around legacy. And Mike Tyson's reply was so funny. He's like, "What's legacy? There's no such thing as legacy. That's just a word that people made up," right? And you just feel, you feel sorry for this little girl because he's all intense, right? And he's like beating up this question that she even asked. But there was some wisdom in it. And the wisdom in it was, why? And he said something to the extent of, what do I care about my legacy when I'm dead? Who's that about? Am I so selfish that I care about what I look like after I'm dead? What people think about me after I'm dead, And
I do remember that.
Yeah, and it's so funny, but there's some truth in it. It's like, legacy for who? Legacy for me, or legacy that my kids know how special they are, that they were loved, that they were adored, right? Is that legacy found in not self-service or ego-focused, but in the service and the betterment of someone else? And that's just something I'd add to you as you think about legacy.
Yeah. One thing I've started doing is I've started to express myself more about the way that I feel about my kids. Like, I know how I feel about them, and I assume they know how I feel about them, but that's not entirely true.
Yeah.
And so, I sent that text to my son last night when I was tucking my youngest son in. I sing a couple songs. We have a secret handshake, and then I tell him things that I love about him, or things that I enjoyed, or things that I'm proud of. And I always try to give him an encouraging word before bedtime because I could be gone today, and that might be the last thing that I say to him that he'll remember. And so I would say, when it comes to leaving your legacy, make sure you're telling the people in your life how you feel about them, what they mean to you, how proud you are of them. Not just your kids, but your wife and your friends and your business partners and everybody. Just tell people how you feel. I think that's going to go a long way, because you know what? When you think about the people you loved, don't you remember how they made you feel? Isn't that what you remember the most?
Yeah.
I was talking with someone the other day, and it was the woman who was cutting my hair, and she said, "Do you have any plans this weekend or whatever?" She said. I said, "Yeah, I'm going hunting with some buddies in Minnesota." And she's like, "Oh, that's cool." I said, "Have you ever been hunting?" And she's like, "No, I would much rather fish." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And she's like, "I haven't been fishing for a long time though." I'm like, "Why? You should go this weekend." She's like, "Well, I lost my fishing partner." I'm like, "Oh, who's that?" She's like, "My grandpa. And I haven't been fishing since." And I'm like, "That's awesome. You could go with your grandpa." She's like, "Yeah, I don't remember much of it. I just remember having a really good time fishing with grandpa." That's legacy.
How I felt. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all it is. Yeah. So make sure you connect the dots for people. Yeah.
I love it. Call to actions, divorce, not death. Sign up, look at that course. Also look at the Iron Council if you want to join us there, orderofman.com/Iron Council. And of course, connect with Mickler, excuse me, on X and on the gram.
That kind of sounded like connect with Mickler.
Like don't actually do that. It was, I don't know why I coughed. I promise. But dude, connect with him. Yeah, it's good stuff.
yeah, definitely connect with me, guys. You should do it. It's awesome.
Yeah. I would too.
Well, Kipp, I appreciate you, man. I have enjoyed the past 8 years of getting to know you and doing this podcast together. And we've talked about this in the past. I get so much out of having these conversations with you. I hope it serves other guys, but selfishly, it definitely serves me. So I appreciate you and your energy you put into this. Yeah. Guys, great questions today. Keep them coming. We'll keep giving you answers. Whether they're right or wrong, we don't know, but we'll keep giving them to you. Yeah. And hopefully they do more good than harm. That's my hope for you. All right, guys, have a good day. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.